Welcome to the second episode in our series on the disappearance of Fiona Pender. In the first episode, we heard that Fiona was an adventurous, beautiful young woman. She modelled for a living and had a love for motorbikes, including her very own pink set of wheels.
The year before she died, Fiona had tragically lost her brother Mark in a biking accident. The Pender family suffered deep grief, but were now able to look forward to a new stage in the family's life.
Fiona was 7 months pregnant. She and her partner John were expecting their first child, but in August 1996, Fiona vanished, never to be seen again.
Around 7 p.m. on the 24th of August 1996, Fiona Pender's loved ones realised that no one had seen Fiona in over 36 hours.
Fiona was 25 and an adult, with full permission to do whatever she liked. But she was also 7 months pregnant, and her leaving without telling anyone would have been very out of character.
The disappearance of this young, vibrant mother-to-be is one of Ireland's most frustrating cases and, in 2026, is still unsolved. I'm crime journalist Barry Cummins.
And I'm RTE presenter Katia Mia. Welcome to Unsolved, an RTE true crime podcast series.
Each week we'll be taking an in-depth look at real Irish cases, seeking justice for the victims of Ireland's unsolved crimes.
So Barry, at this point, Josephine has rang the alarm bells. On Saturday, August 24th, that evening, the Penders and John Thompson are searching Tullamore for Fiona. They're searching friends' houses, they're searching local food restaurants, shops that would still be open at that hour of the evening, and also the gravesite where Mark Pender was buried, because that is somewhere that Fiona often visited.
She'd been up there a few times, all right, and would go alone. So it was a natural place to look. Yeah. You can imagine all the kind of the frantic moving around and calling to people, because again, very few mobile phones back then, so it was actually physically calling to people's homes, knocking on doors. This is late at night now at this stage on Saturday, and kind of banging on doors and have you seen Fiona, so the alarm is being raised with so many different people, and nobody has seen her at all.
Yeah, that's right. Fiona is nowhere to be found. Later that evening on Saturday, August 24th, the Penders and John Thompson report Fiona as missing to the Gardaí. She is not seen in 36 hours. And now, while we know she is 25 and she's independent, the Gardaí wouldn't have raised alarm bells, but we are remembering a really important element of Fiona's story. She was 7 months pregnant, and that fact in itself was raising alarm bells for the Gardaí.
It was raising alarm bells for the Gardaí, certainly for the family, more so immediately. There's no sign of a crime, no struggle, there's no blood, there's no sign of anything untoward, except that Fiona can't be found. So the initial Garda reaction is kind of, absolutely, she's an adult, and these weren't the words used, but actually she'll turn up. And you can imagine that, because most people who go missing do turn up. But Josephine always remembered that initial reaction. She knew something was wrong and that the Gardaí were not taking it as seriously as her immediately. Now, they do pretty quickly in the hours afterwards, and certainly into the next day. But the most important element of it is that it's a woman who's 7 months pregnant and cannot be found.
And thinking of Josephine Pender, it's a mother's instinct. You know, they kind of would get a feeling in their stomach. They know something is not right. After a further 36 hours of exhaustive searches on Monday, August 26th, the Pender family, friends of Fiona, the friends of John Thompson, they're searching Tullamore and there's still no trace of her. The Gardaí agree this is not normal. And at midday, on lunchtime news bulletins, Fiona's disappearance is announced nationally. And you come into this because you were 22 years old at the time. This was one of the first big cases that you reported on.
This was the big one at the start. I was only a journalist a couple of weeks at that stage. I was a cub reporter back then, and I just so happened to be working in Tullamore. I travelled down to join Midlands Radio 3 there. So yes, that was the first case I ever reported on, a serious case. So I have very strong memories of what's happening in August, September, October 1996, and since then.
Do you remember going to Gardaí stations in Tullamore asking for updates at the time you heard of Fiona's disappearance?
I routinely would call into the Garda station really early in the morning because my shift began. I had to be in to read the news for 7 o'clock every morning. So the day would start really early. And I'd call into the Garda station and became known for that, calling in to say anything happened overnight or whatever. So that's how I initially came to know about Fiona's case, and that there was a serious concern for a missing woman.
Yeah.
It was, that's how I kind of face-to-face contact with the Gardaí was how I was learning that something really, really serious, unexplained was going on. I think they were trying to get their heads around it as well, because massive searches, searching the canal, searching all around Tullamore, beyond, searching everywhere, high and low, and nothing showing up, no trace, nobody saying in those first few days in particular, nobody coming forward saying that there was any particular place Gardaí could actually hone in on and say this is where she may be.
And I mean, the Gardaí took control of her flat on Church Street. They did an extensive search in there and they found no signs of a break-in or struggle at that moment. So it's like she vanished without a trace.
Yeah, and it's so chilling. And people say, oh, somebody like vanished off the face of the earth. And it does sound like that, but of course, you don't just vanish. Somebody causes you to disappear, or you choose yourself to disappear. But it's there's always an answer. But it became clear that there was nothing to indicate what might be behind it. Where might Fiona have gone? Did she choose to go somewhere herself, or did somebody force her to go somewhere? And what Gardaí did was look at the bedsit where John, her partner, had last reported seeing her sitting up in bed on that Friday morning, and to figure out what might have happened either in the bedsit or outside, and what else was missing. And so they came up with some clothing. So the last reported sighting of her is she's in her bedclothes.
Yeah.
But then they figured that there's actually some of her clothes are missing, and that becomes part of the story. I think there were white leggings, blue T-shirt, and a black and pink rain jacket, which she was known to wear. They were never found.
And this was based on an inventory that the Gardaí did on her clothes that were in the apartment or in the bedsit.
So they'd be asking John, her partner, and her mum, Josephine, and anyone, Emer, anyone else, her friends, anyone who'd know her, what's maybe missing here? What's she known to wear? What's she known to have that maybe isn't where it should be? Because any clue, like a black and pink rain jacket, wherever that might be where Fiona is. Something that stands out. So they were looking for all of these clues, basically what's missing other than Fiona.
What was it like? You were working for the Midlands Radio 3 in Tullamore. You were casually walking in and out of the Gardaí station for your updates, for your bulletins. Paint us a picture of your day-to-day around that time.
Yeah, I was working, my boss was Barry Flynn, who was my first boss, brilliant news editor, and he was letting me contact the Gardaí, call in, chase different aspects of the story. He was doing the same as well. And it was that face-to-face interaction where local radio was so important, and certainly in missing persons cases as well, to get the word out locally. Where there's a big audience for the local news, and where it's quite a specific appeal that Gardaí might make and information about missing persons cases. And I have so many memories of calling into the Garda station and that time in Tullamore where everybody was talking about Fiona. And it was a time that this was my first job, and I did lots of reports about the case. It was a kind of... to think about that time, 1996, I was earning £100 a week. My first job, I was delighted with that. I'd work for free to get the experience, but I was delighted to be paid as well. I think I was paying £35 of that went on rent.
Wow.
I was living down there during the week. I was coming home to Dublin then on weekends. And I was paying £10 per driving lesson as well. Is
this something you had to do with work?
Yeah, I had to
drive.
Part of the job was I had to learn to drive to get out beyond. I was lucky I was able to call into the Gardaí because I was walking around Tullamore. But if I want to get further, I'd have to be able to
To be a
drive wherever.
roving reporter.
Yeah, to get around Lee Shoffley and Westmeath and wherever else. So that was the kind of time. I got my first mobile phone there for work as well. I remember it was one where you pull the aerial up out of the phone. The Bosch phone was
I
the
remember
the one.
those.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you have to pull the aerial up to make calls. So with the phone, I started working the phones and started ringing around, started chasing information on this particular case in many different ways. And over time, I came to know the Pender family as well. And I do know it was an experience that has always stayed with me, where I know the families of missing people are so reliant on the media to help in those cases. There's a desperation to find their loved one, and there's a big responsibility on the media then to do right by them, to carry whatever reports, but also to mind them in a sense that the vulnerability of families in those moments where their whole lives are being aired, everybody's talking about them, everyone's talking about their missing loved one. And they have to
Yeah.
because they're appealing for information, but it's quite intrusive as well.
Yeah, they're almost at the mercy of, national media and also the Gardaí, I suppose. And we know a huge search gets underway. This includes divers being sent into the canal and into several other neighbouring rivers. We have specialised units that are out across Slieve Bloom, Boglands, even private farmlands where they had to get permission to search with metal detectors. Because I know you mentioned earlier, due to an accident Fiona had experienced earlier on in life, she had a metal pin in her arm that would have been picked up by a metal detector.
I mean, it might sound a bit strange, but I think thank God she has that, because even today it might be, it might help to find her someday, that this metal pin in her arm might one day ping in whatever way. But yes, the Gardaí were conscious of that in all their searches. They did massive searches.
Yeah. No expense was spared, you would say.
And from that Monday, so she disappeared before the start of that weekend, and it's really Monday when everything gets kind of cranked up nationally in terms of public appeals. But Gardaí are by then doing physical searches everywhere they can think of, searching high and low, and nothing is showing up. And that's where slowly people are beginning to realize that there's something more to this. It's not just a woman 7 months pregnant deciding to go for a walk, however crazy that might have sounded in the first place.
Yeah.
But actually, it hasn't happened.
Especially when we remember the fact that, after Fiona's shopping day out, the last day she was seen, she was walking back to her bedsit with her mum, Josephine, and her brother, John, to help her with the shopping. So even when you say something like someone that's 7 months pregnant going out for a walk by themselves, how long can you go out for that walk?
She could well have gone for a walk, but that she hasn't been found after going for the walk is the crazy element of it, that it's not, she's nowhere to be found. There's something more to this.
I have a question for you, because we see here that there were specialised cadaver units with cadaver sniffer dogs. These were borrowed from the PSNI. How come Ireland didn't have their own cadaver dogs?
Well, we still don't. We have access, the Gardaí have access to cadaver dogs when they say they need them, but they don't have one even today within the Garda dog unit. They have other brilliant dogs that can detect drugs and guns and even blood and different things, but not a cadaver dog that can find a body.
Yeah.
And that's the specific skill set of a cadaver dog. So we do know they've borrowed cadaver dogs from the PSNI. They've also borrowed from the Civil Defence, in that there are cadaver dogs within the Republic of Ireland that Gardaí can call upon, but they're privately owned or voluntary organisations have them or whatever, but they're not specific to a Garda dog, minded, cared for, trained by a Garda at all times. So back then in 1996, the same story as there is all these years later, that cadaver dogs were part of the search strategy, but Gardaí had to borrow, had to ask.
Were they really expensive at the time?
No, I mean, there'd be upkeep and minding of the dog, so there would be a cost. It's just for some reason and it's still going on now, this debate about shouldn't Ireland not have its own cadaver dogs? Should Gardaí not have their own cadaver dogs? I personally think they should. but still they don't.
Fiona is missing, and her missing persons case quickly becomes a national headline here. And all of Ireland is really rallying behind this missing pregnant woman. You know, the story touches a lot of people.
It does. All of those aspects of her story, Fiona's vulnerability at that time, that she is dependent on people to help or assist her in different ways, and to mind her. She'll need her own space and her own independence and privacy, but she needs help at different times, especially as she's moving towards her due date. And that's why there's so much concern as to, because it's not only is Fiona missing, but it's Fiona who is 7 months pregnant. So her unborn child, there's concern in case there was any medical care needed.
Yeah.
But right from the very early moments, Josephine is very concerned because it's so unnatural. And a family knows their loved one more than anyone. So while in theory anybody could choose to go missing or choose to disappear, a family knows best. A family has that instinct. And Josephine knew that it wasn't, even though Fiona is grieving her brother Mark, and she might be going through whatever traumas, that she hasn't decided to up sticks.
Yeah.
And again, however obscure that might even sound, but she hasn't actually done it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's been proven over time. But right back at the start, Josephine knew, no, that's not the answer here.
So, Barry, this brings us to September 1996, and this is when two separate witnesses come forward about a car.
Yeah, and two very interesting pieces of information. One relates to a witness who said that they saw two men on Church Street who had been car and were carrying a rolled up carpet, what seemed like a rolled up carpet, and they were in the area there. Those two men never identified, which is really interesting. Who were they? What were they carrying? And then the other bit of information was a witness saying they'd almost been run off the road near the Slieve Bloom Mountains. Again, this relates to a vehicle which was said to be traveling at breakneck speed. But again, that vehicle or whoever was driving never identified. But the fact that we're driving at speed in that area at around the time of Fiona vanishing is really interesting.
Definitely. Yet a very important date is still approaching. We get to October 22nd in 1996, which was sadly Fiona's due date. This was a date that was highly anticipated with the Pender family. There was a lot of excitement around the new baby, new arrival, new hope in the family. And this was almost after 2 months of high effort searches that the whole country got behind. So when I think about this date, it's gut wrenching in a way.
Yeah, and the date was important in so many different ways, but in a practical way, Gardaí had reached out to all the maternity hospitals in the Republic, in the North as well, and right across the UK, checking in with every hospital. Was there an Irish woman who had turned up with any name, but who was pregnant and was seeking assistance, and was due around the end of October? And there was nobody fitting that particular description.
Yeah.
So she wasn't anywhere. And I know a due date is I say just the due date. It is the date where it may not be the date that the baby arrives. And babies have their ways of deciding, are they coming early or late?
They're on their own timeline.
Will they be on time? Well, in that sense, was the baby going to arrive on the 22nd of October? But it's a date that is certainly the Pender family had fixed in their minds that that they knew. And the whole idea during most of 1996 was talking about when the baby was due and what would happen thereafter. And then they get to that point and Fiona's still missing. So they know wherever Fiona is, that they know the very real impact on her baby as well at that stage.
Yeah.
But by that stage, they know, Josephine especially, knows that Fiona's not coming back. And she knows in her heart that Fiona has been taken, her baby has been taken, that they're dead.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're accepting two losses at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think Josephine, in this particular case, she kind of knew from quite early on that something awful had happened to Fiona. But still, and this is the thing, even when your mind is telling you, and sadly your heart is telling you, and everything's telling you she's gone, in the absence of knowing where she is, there's still that tiny percentage of hope that she will turn up somewhere and that the baby will be okay. But then as once you get into October, into November 1996, the knowledge that wherever Fiona and her baby are, that they are lost.
Fiona's due date was a heartbreaking milestone for the Pender family, but the search continued, and in April 1997, the Tullamore Gardaí closed in on 5 people of interest. So, Barry, the investigation continues. 7 a.m. on Thursday, the 24th of April, 1997, 5 people are arrested by the Gardaí for questioning about the disappearance of Fiona Pender. These 5 people are not warned at all. The Gardaí simply arrive at a number of addresses across Laois and Offaly at 7 a.m. to inform each of the 5 people that they are under arrest and they can be held for a maximum of 12 hours.
Yeah, I remember that day really well because I was just going about my normal reporting day where I'd call down to the Garda station early in the morning on the way in into work. And I just got a sense before I even called into the station that it seemed busier. Bit of action, bit of movement, cars moving around. And then I saw what I would, and I had a kind of a feeling, but I come to know down the years, you can kind of spot as well. Detectives who weren't from the area. So they looked like guards, plain clothes. They do have a look of a Garda, but I just didn't know them. They certainly weren't Tullamore Gardaí. And that's when I began to realize that something big was happening. And I called in and the word came through confirming that people had just been arrested and were being held, were being questioned at Tullamore Garda station. So this is massive news in this investigation.
Barry, you broke this story while you were working at Midlands Radio 3 in Tullamore. You were the one to break the story nationally.
Yeah, I was keen to break the story. I mean, I knew the importance of it. And this was big. What I knew in those moments, and I was being told 5 people arrested. That's all I knew, and that they were all being held in connection with Fiona's disappearance. And that the phraseology was important. They weren't saying Fiona's murder because this case was not declared a murder until many years later. So it was Fiona's disappearance. And I was being told it was quite specific about what was happening here. And then I spotted an RTE van that was down outside the Garda station. It was pulling up. So I kind of made quick decisions to run around to my radio station, Midlands Radio 3 on William Street.
How far was it in comparison to the Garda station?
It was about 100 to 200 yards.
Okay.
You run straight up with your back from the Garda station and turn left and then across the road into a really small shopping centre and up the steps and into the radio station. So that's what I did. Even though I had a mobile, I can't remember if I rang in advance to say I'm on my way, but I knew I needed to get back there to talk it through, to say, here, this is happening. Let's get it out. Let's get the info out. So yeah, I really remember. And I suppose my instinct was to break the story. It's only afterwards I think about what the Pender family must have been thinking at that time as the news has been broken to them by Gardaí of these dramatic arrests. But yeah, I remember breaking the story and then hanging around all day doing reports to say 5 people still being held. There was no more information, nothing more I could say. Just, still in custody, still being questioned. And that happened right throughout that day.
And you mentioned the Pender family. They were informed about these 5 suspects being arrested. And we remember Emer Condren talking about her close relationship with Fiona Pender, how they modelled together. They were set up to start a business after Fiona delivered the baby. Emer Condren goes over to the Pender house to console them and spend the day with them, give them some extra emotional support.
Yeah, Emer has been a massive support to the Penders right throughout, and even today still will talk about Fiona and will fight for Fiona in whatever way, and will constantly urge people to do the right thing. But yes, so the Penders had, I suppose, a support structure and people who loved and cared for Fiona, friends of hers, who reached out and did whatever they could. And sometimes all you could do is just be with them, sit with them, make a cup of tea, say something, and maybe sometimes know when not to say something.
And we know the suspects were held for a maximum of 12 hours. That's what was allowed. And 7 p.m. hits. And it's bad news for the Pender family when they maybe got their hopes up and thinking they might be new leads in Fiona's case. But all 5 suspects have been released. So I'm trying to think about it in the sense that, all these 5 people were arrested separately.
They were the only arrests to be made in the case, and they came after, 8 months into the investigation. The number of people arrested, not just one person, 5 people. So the suspicion that up to 5 people, either knowingly or unknowingly, were shielding something, hiding information, or hiding Fiona. So it's a high bar to warrant somebody being arrested, taken out of their home, taken into a Garda station, to have teams of detectives question them. It's not a nice situation to be in for anybody. But that's what happened. And then, as you say, Katya, they are released without charge. So all those expectations raised during the day, is this the breakthrough? Are Gardaí going to find Fiona? And I was one of those raising those expectations in the kind of reports I was doing, because this was, after 8 months of, you might say, nothing, this was the first concrete thing to happen in the investigation. And it was a big deal. And then it seemed to fall flat. People released without charge, and it seemed nothing, as far as anybody could tell, nothing new coming out of the arrests. And the impact, I know the impact on the family, and I've sat in their home in Connolly Park so many times, and I met with Josephine in particular many, many times, and she spoke about that day, that evening, April 1997, and how Gardaí were properly keeping the family up to date. And when they're told that these people have been released without charge, Josephine, knowing and suspecting so many different things, and putting her faith in those arrests that they might be a breakthrough, when all of that leads nowhere, she's distraught. Her husband, Sean, as well, is so upset. And Josephine told me about, she felt that in particular, Sean seemed to change even that day. That, as she would describe it, that he just aged in front of her, hearing that these people had been released, and that they were hoping all day for something positive to come out of this case, out of the arrests. And then, as Josephine says, once these people were released, and she told Sean, she says Sean just went downhill from there, and Sean died tragically 3 years later. But you could perhaps trace so much of this case to the impact of Fiona's loss.
Yeah. And we're also remembering that it wasn't that long ago at this point where Josephine and Sean had to bury their son Mark.
Yeah.
His family has just been through a tragedy, and they're only beginning to heal from it.
Yeah.
If at all.
Yeah, and they're grappling with all of this.
Yeah.
And the different emotions that challenge a family of a missing person. Missing when you know the person is, you just know they've been murdered.
Yeah. So we know about the arrests of the 5 suspects, and these were the only arrests ever made in the case of Fiona Pender.
Yeah.
These people are released, and in 1998, we have an update that Fiona's unsolved disappearance is included in a task force put together by Gardaí named Operation Trace. So this was put together to investigate the so-named vanishing triangle of Irish women. Barry, what do you remember about this time?
I remember it was all the talk of, is there a serial killer? And it's quite a good conversation, an important conversation to still have, that there may well have been and still might be a serial killer who targeted some of the women who disappeared in the 1990s and who's still out there. But also, Fiona's case was properly considered within that, because they need to consider all options. And while there is the strong belief, suspicion, whatever, that Fiona's case is a local case and not unrelated to any other case, you do have to always consider, well, what if all that's wrong? What if it is somebody who happened to be traveling through Tullamore on a given time of day and spotted Fiona and took her away? But Gardaí looked at all that, and they no matter what way they looked at it, they figured that no, Fiona's was one particular case completely unrelated to any other missing persons case or suspicious missing persons case. So Fiona's case is not linked to and there's about a dozen women who disappeared in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Some of them we're going to talk about in other podcasts as well. And some of them are linked or maybe linked, and then others, perhaps the chilling thing is that they're not linked sometimes, so that you have a number of people who have murdered and hidden bodies of people, in particular hidden bodies of women, that it's perhaps not just one man, one person, it's a number of men acting individually at different times.
And I can imagine there's a lot of pressure on the Gardaí at this point, you know, by the country, by the people in Tullamore as well, on new leads for Fiona Pender's case. And almost 10 years after Operation Trace is established, we do have a new lead. A cross commemorating Fiona is discovered in Slieve Bloom woods. And this was a strange moment because in May of 2008, a solo hiker happens to come across this cross commemorating Fiona's disappearance, and there is a description on it. It says Fiona Pender, buried here, August 22nd, 1996. This is strange for a certain reason. Barry, tell us why.
Well, it predates the last reported sighting of Fiona. So when Gardaí looked at that, they saw this crude cross. Somebody went to the trouble of putting that cross in a quite isolated location, which somebody then just came across at a certain time. So it's elaborate, and it's so they were trying to figure out what's behind this. But the actual detail on the cross was at odds with the Garda records in the case about the last reported sighting of Fiona. So they didn't just dismiss it, though. They said, right, we have to look at this. It could be a hoax, an elaborate hoax at that, but maybe not. Let's investigate this. Let's dig, and that's exactly what they did. They excavated and searched around the area where this cross had been placed. They found nothing. So the answer might be within that having done this really extensive search, this cross is not the answer. Whoever put it there may not be the answer. But why did they put it there?
Yeah.
Who are they? What were they trying to gain by putting it there and leaving it to be found eventually? It's not like somebody just ringing in with a call to a Garda station anonymously, which takes a couple of seconds to do.
It's quite specific.
Somebody spent a lot of time going up into the Slieve Blooms and leaving this cross in a particular place, and you have to wonder why.
In the final episode of this series, we'll hear about a case in Canada which led to new searches taking place, bringing hope to Fiona's family.
If you know anything, have seen anything, or remember anything about any of the cases discussed in our series, please contact our tip line by emailing unsolved@rte.ie.
Join us later this week on Unsolved for part 3 of our series on the murder of Fiona Pender.